On the shot. Embiid turns, fires for the win. Joel Embiid and the Sixers take Game 3 here in Toronto.
And the crowd is silent. Everybody, mouth shut.
Okay. Welcome everybody to Planet 76 podcast. Feels like it's been a while since we recorded, but it's only been a week, right?
I think like 10 days. We did the preview episode of round one, I think on a Monday or Tuesday. Yeah.
So we have episode, what is this, 49? Yeah. Episode 49, quickly approaching episode 50. We're going to be recapping games 1, 2, and 3 of the Sixers Raptors series. But before we do, make sure you guys subscribe to the podcast. Go check us out on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and more specifically, and dare I say more importantly, Instagram, where we've been doing our Planet 76 5-minute recaps on there as well. And yeah, again, we're going to be recapping the games. Episode 49. Let's just get right into it. Troy.
Let's do it.
Welcome.
Whew.
Let's get something.
I think there's going to be a lot of positive vibes on this one. There's been a lot of, as you mentioned, the Planet 76 5-minute recaps. There's been a lot of positive vibes on those recaps that we're recording. You know, each one of us recording one. Or you've done two, I've done one so far, and there's a lot of positive vibes because there's a lot of positive things going on. The Sixers are up 3-0, and we're recording now, what is it, the 21st?
Yes.
Thursday night, 11 p.m. on Thursday, so we're going to preview the Saturday action ahead as we look and potentially look at a Sixers sweep. We will talk about that here in just a moment, but Sixers are up 3-0. Big thank you, big shout out to Joel Embiid, man. What was your 0.9 seconds on the shot clock, 2.7 left in the game, tie game, Joel Embiid. Run me through your head as that was going down, as the play was evolving, and then they get the ball into him and he knocks it down.
I mean, to be honest with you, he shot it, and I was thinking, why did you just shoot that, Joel? Why'd you do that? But, I mean, he literally swished. It was a swish. It was nothing but net. And I was literally sitting there like this. I was on the couch. I was like, oh my gosh. I cannot believe that he just took that, but also made that. And Doc Rivers apparently, Glen Rivers, that's what I'm calling him now, drew that up for Joel. And there's video of it I posted today on my page. I was thinking, like, I have to post this. I was in shock. He actually drew up that play for Embiid, and now if it didn't work, we'd probably be speaking about it differently. But right. I mean, if you look at it realistically, Joel Embiid probably was the best shooter on the floor with Harden out. Obviously, he fouled out last night.
Right.
So even if he missed, you're not necessarily mad at the play call.
Yeah, I mean, he was so open.
He kind of was really open.
With the help of this Tobias Harris screen. And, I mean, with 0.9 seconds on the shot clock, you can probably think, like, there's a better look you can get. But you're not going to get many more open looks than that. You're not going to be more open than that. I'll be honest. So if you go beyond that, so in the huddle, when they're, about to draw up that play, I'm wondering what they're going to do. And I'll be completely honest, one thing that came to my mind, I don't know if it came to anybody else's mind at all, but I was waiting for Furkan Korkmaz to take his warm-up off, throw him in, and let him knock one down. I don't think that crossed anyone else's mind, did it?
Not me. I mean, maybe somebody else, but not me, that's for sure.
Or, what was the game? Was that I don't know if he was ice cold off the bench, that game winner he had against Portland, but he was pretty cold a couple years ago.
Yeah.
So I was like, because James Harden was out, so it was like, what five are you going to throw out there?
Right, exactly.
The five that he threw out there obviously made sense, Niang and Danny, but it would have been something if Furkan came in, at least as a decoy, I don't know. But that was something that was a phenomenal ending to the game. And, I think we should start there. I think we'll start in Game 3 and then work back to Game 1 and 2. So Sixers didn't lead in regulation. I don't know that that's happened before. I haven't seen any stats or anything showing up about, teams in the playoffs not leading for a single minute in regulation, single second in regulation, and winning. the game in overtime. I don't know if you saw anything about that, but that was a first for my watching. That's for sure.
Yeah, that was interesting, and there were. I remember specifically in the fourth quarter last night, there were probably at least 6 times where the Sixers either tie the game, or they were 1 away, 2 away. They just couldn't get over the hump,
Right.
and obviously overtime they ended up winning. But that was just a grudge match, just punches thrown like every possession, basket after basket, like. Neither team let up, and I'm glad that the Sixers were able to stick in that game really the entire way, even though they were down almost 20 at one point in the second and third quarter. It's just, oh my gosh, you're really glad they ended up with that win.
So, well, let me ask you. I mean, we as you know, as often as we watch Sixers games, and the two of us, like. The Sixers, I think we can say confidently here, didn't play particularly well.
Oh no!
So how did they win? Like what did you see that? Okay, well, obviously Joel Embiid went off in the second half. How the heck did we win?
I don't know.
That's literally what I wrote in the outline. How the heck did we win that game?
He did actually write that. I don't know. I really don't know. The Sixers had almost 30 turnovers. They shot really well from 3, I'll say that. Raptors, I think, they couldn't capitalize on the Sixers just missing a ton of shots and turning the ball. I mean, they had a ton of points off turnovers, the Raptors did, but they couldn't capitalize when it really mattered, which was when they were up by 2 and, the Sixers were coming back, missing shots. That's when the Raptors should have kept building their lead. And it didn't happen. They weren't able to capitalize. They weren't able to fully capitalize on the Sixers' missed opportunities. And I think a lot of it comes from that. Like I said, turnovers were massive in favor of the Raptors this game. I'll talk about that when we have our Game 4 preview in a little while on this episode. But it was just, oh my gosh. Yeah, it's really fair to say that the Sixers maybe shouldn't have won this game because just off the turnovers alone, I mean, that's atrocious. That they had more in Game 3 than they did in Games 1 and 2 combined.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So my initial thought post game after I came back down to earth a little bit was that because obviously 2 good teams. Yeah. One take care of business at home. You go back to the 5 seeds home court, and it's like, okay. You think in your head, they're probably going to win at least one of these 2. That's just normally it seems to be what you see in the NBA. And now, obviously, they can certainly win Game 4. The Raptors can. But, to me, my initial thought was, that was the one Toronto was supposed to get. That was the one where the stars aligned a little bit. They didn't have to face James Harden in overtime. Joel had 5 points at halftime. Sixers had more turnovers than than shot attempts, it felt like, for a lot of the first half, at least the first quarter maybe. And that was the one they were supposed to get, and they didn't get it.
They had the game won in the second quarter, and they just couldn't get it done. Oh my gosh. Especially, we know it's crushing because the Sixers have done that before. We know how that goes. We know how it feels,
So I'm very, very curious. Yeah. I'm curious to see how the Sixers come out in Game 4, but I'm more curious to see how the Raptors come out, even how the crowd interacts and down 3-0 compared to being down 2-0 and you haven't played on your home court yet is a very big difference. And I like to think that the Raptors are going to be flat. I like to think that they're going to throw in the towel. I don't know, but that'd be great. Again, we're going to get to it, but I would love to, get rid of these guys now. As soon as possible, be the first one into the second round, get a week off, get some rest, get healthy, that would be huge. I will say this, too. I think there were a lot of tired legs in the overtime, and the reason I say that is because for the first 4 minutes and 59 seconds, so excluding the Joel Embiid 3 in overtime, there were only 12 points total. The Raptors had 6, the Sixers had 6. Yeah. In 4 minutes and 59 seconds of overtime. That's pretty low scoring.
Like I
And
said,
then,
it was just
obviously,
a
Joel
straight
hits the
up,
three.
like, just punching match. Just, like,
Yeah.
dragging on. Like, guys were just scrapping for buckets. Like, it was just a brawl.
It was. It was. But it felt freaking good.
Yeah.
You know, it's amazing how we can be as dominant as we were in the first two games, and then that game 3 was almost more satisfying due to the fact we didn't play our best, due to the fact that, you know, we have a 3-0 lead in a series that a lot of people, including myself, thought it was going to be very, very, very tightly contested. And again, so far it has not. And you like to think the Sixers can take care of business, if not in this one, at least by Game 5.
Yeah.
I'm knocking on all the wood that's around me right now. Like, I don't know, but it's going to be a lot for the Raptors to force a Game 7. Let's just say that.
Especially at this point, yeah.
Yeah. So, and then, yeah, as we mentioned, so Game 1 and Game 2, Sixers were pretty dominant. You did the recap for Game 1. And the Sixers won that one by a score of 131 to 111, the Tyrese Maxey game, if you will. I mean, that just it kind of set the tone, obviously, for the series and what Maxey was able to do. What else did you see in that one?
Just great. Just what a way to start the series. Obviously, blowing out the Raptors is a huge plus and a great way to start the series. And obviously, like you mentioned, it kind of set the tone. Because everything after that seemingly translated into success for the most part, obviously, because Game 3 was extremely rocky. But for the most part, it was a great indicator of the series.
Yep. And the Sixers had 3 turnovers in Game 1 against the Toronto Raptors. 3 turnovers. I mean, that was... They looked so... I mean, Game 1 and 2, but especially Game 1, I'd say, because of the turnovers and all that. But, like, they just looked so prepared. They looked like they knew exactly what the game plan was. Shout out, props to Glen Rivers. They just looked like they knew the game plan, and they came out and executed very, very well. And so... and then Game 2. So Game 2, I did the recap episode for on Planet 765. Sixers won by a score of 112 to 97. Joel had 31 and 11 in that one. Tobias had 20 and 10. Tyrese Maxey had 23. 13 total points off the bench. 14 turnovers for the Sixers in that one. What stuck out to me is, I mean, the Raptors came out pretty hot in that one. I think they had an 11-2 lead at one point. And Joel and James Harden just... time and time again. Maybe it didn't show necessarily in the stat sheet all of first quarter. I don't know what Harden finished with stats-wise in the first quarter. He only had 14 in the game, so I don't know what he did exactly in the first quarter. That I'm trying to remember what stuck out. But, like, they weathered the storm tremendously. That's where it felt good to, like, have another star like James Harden alongside Joel Embiid. The former quote-unquote star around Joel Embiid, I don't think would have been that weather-the-storm kind of guy that James Harden has been in this series. Toronto has thrown punches, and James Harden just has a way of slowing the game down, playing at whatever pace he wants, and doing whatever he wants to do, and just having the ball, just everything dictate based on what he desires to do. And so I thought he was crucial in that one, despite the 14-point performance, 6 rebounds, 6 assists. Yeah, I mean, Toronto won the fourth quarter by 9, 26-17, and we still won the game by 15. That was a dominant performance as well. So given all of that,
I think overall with Harden, sorry.
Nope, go for it.
I was gonna say, overall with Harden, I mean, I think he's been really good. I think last night, especially with his shot selection and his actual shot percentage, makes, all that stuff, was very good. I think he actually shot 50% from 3 and from the field last night, which is really great. That's something he hasn't really been doing too much of, which you love to see. So, but overall, I think Harden's been really good, and I think he's in the outline we have, is he doing enough? I think he's doing enough, but I still want more because I still know he can do more, especially as a scorer. So I really would love to see that. And we know this because we've seen him do it. You know, he's had a couple 30-point games with the Sixers. I believe he had a 30-point triple-double against the Knicks, I believe maybe it was, or maybe it was the Clippers or something. Either way, he's
in Minnesota.
Minnesota possibly even too. Yeah, he has that in him. And he,
right.
you know, I still would like to see him. I still would like to see him get to that level again because I think he can do that.
It's very interesting to me. This whole James Harden on the Sixers thing.
Yeah.
One, it's still hard to believe. I saw you post that video this morning. It was hilarious.
I was walking to class and I was like, dude, wait a minute. James Harden, what the heck?
Yeah. So for starters, James Harden in the Sixers uniform, still getting used to that. But I think it's just so interesting. I saw a tweet that said, you know, James Harden can put up the numbers that he's been putting up with the Sixers, and especially in the playoffs, and still have a tremendous impact on the game, still have an all-star, quote-unquote, impact on the game. And I couldn't agree more. So James Harden so far in these playoffs has put up 22, 14 assists, and 5 boards in game 1. That was a monster game. I'll take 22 and 14 all day long. 14, 6 and 6 in game 2, and then last night, before fouling out, 19 and 10 assists, and over 50% from the floor, like you mentioned, 7 for 13. It's a very tough question. Is he doing enough? Is he doing enough right now to beat the Toronto Raptors? Yeah, that's for sure. But I think if we were to read those stat lines and the Sixers were down 2-1 or the Sixers were up 2-1 and they lost last night, we might be saying what you're saying. Well, yeah, James Harden needs to be more aggressive. James Harden needs to score. So a lot of it is attached to winning, and I think rightfully so. But, man, I don't know. Like, what would you, maybe not averages, but like, what does he need to do? Because I almost want to say I'm on the other side and say he's doing enough.
Yeah.
But again, that's coming from the up 3-0 side. So we're likely, it appears we're going to play the Miami Heat. What do you want to see? I don't know how you want to, if you want to give stats or if you want to give, his best game, he's going to do this. Like, I don't know.
For me, I just would like to see him. I mean, this is kind of the same themes I've been harping on for the time that he's been here. I want to see him be a more aggressive scorer. I want to see him really differentiate between being a passer and being a scorer because he can do both. We know this. And I think it's important for him to find a balance, which he has a little bit, but he still needs to work on that. And his shot selection as well. Obviously, games here he went 6 for 17 in game 1, which just below 50%, or just below, well, actually, it's almost below 40%, I believe.
Right.
If my math is right. I don't know
Yep,
I don't know if it is
37 or something.
Yeah. So ideally, you want a game shooting wise from James Harden like game 3. 7 for 13 is perfect. Well over 50% from the field, and that's really what you want. And he took 13 shots, so pretty high volume, pretty high percentage as well. That's what you want from Harden. That's what I want. Aggressiveness and shot selection are two things that, regardless of who their second round opponent is, I would like to see James Harden become and do more of, if that makes sense.
Okay. Yeah, where would you like to be his shot attempts per game against the Miami Heat, let's say?
Well, I still would like to see him take a lot of shots. 3 in game 2 is... I definitely would like to see him shoot.
Yeah, 3 for 9 in game 2.
I definitely would like to see him take more than 3 shots. Somewhere upwards of what he was in game 3. Somewhere 7, 8, 9, maybe 10, depending on the night that he's having. I mean, like I alluded to earlier, not alluded to, but like I said earlier, where he had the couple 30-point games. I mean, he's had Sixers games where he's taken 20 shots. And I'm
Right.
not saying he needs to do that, but I'm saying that he needs to take more, especially when he's 3 for 9. That's not good at all, even though he had 14. Upwards of 10, if not a little more, I think. And a lot of those, more of those will translate to makes just because he's taking more shots. So that's kind of where I would like to see that. And I know it might not be as easy because Maxey takes shots. Maxey is a pretty efficient scorer, though. He doesn't really need a ton of shots to score. Harris takes shots. Embiid sometimes takes a lot of shots, especially on jumpers. So it might not be as easy for Harden to do that, but he can still do that for himself. He still can manufacture the shots for himself because he's still great shot creator. I mean, he can do things for himself that a lot of guys can't. So I think that's a pretty realistic expectation.
Okay. All right. So I pulled up a stat real quick. So James Harden, obviously in this series, we average it out 17 shots, 9 shots, 13 shots, puts him at an average for 3 games of 13 shots a game. Tyrese Maxey is averaging close to 17 shots per game.
I did not know he was taking that many.
16.7 shots per game for Tyrese Maxey in this series. And to your point, he has shown some efficiency in that. 2 of those games, he was 66% or better. Obviously, Game 1, he was 14 for 21. Game 2, 8 for 11. And then last night, 8 for 18 in Game 3. But that's a lot of shots. Talk about high volume.
Wow.
For a first-year starter, and not to mention a most improved player snub.
I did not know he was taking that many shots a game. Wow.
This series, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So, now, James Harden is incredibly good at basketball, one. Now, do you think part of it is, at least, let's just stay in the focus of these playoffs, forget the regular season. Do you think part of it is James Harden is kind of just seeing what the defense is giving? He's seeing opportunities that he has to feed a guy like Tyrese Maxey, to hit Niang in the corner for 3, to hit Danny Green for 3, and he's just taking that. Yeah. And because it's working, because his teammates are making shots. I remember Game 1. I don't know, I forget the percentage, but I saw a stat that was like Sixers are 9 for 13 on passes directly from James Harden that turned into assists. Like, it was remarkable. And so it's like, if they were 0 for 13 on shots, maybe James Harden will be more aggressive. But do you think part of it could be that he's just doing with what he's given?
I think so. Definitely. I definitely think that. And I think that's been the case for not only the playoffs, but for the regular season, too. Because still, I mean, a lot of this has been Harden trying to find his way and trying to... And it's not something that's been necessarily difficult, but trying to implement himself into this roster.
Right. Why don't we give a few shout-outs? So I labeled this time for some shout-outs. So we're 3 games into the playoffs, and we're going to alternate. We're going to give 4 total, so you'll go first. Cool. If whatever it is that you want to shout out after these 3 games in the playoffs in a good way, because we're not going to be talking bad vibes here up 3-0.
And there really isn't much negative to even bring up. Even if we wanted to, there isn't a ton of negative. Yeah. There aren't a ton of negative things to say. So yeah,
you're exactly right. There's not a whole lot. No. So it's easy to pick out the good ones when you're up 3-0. So. Whether it's a player specifically, whether it's a stat, whether it's something a player is doing, whether it's the fact that Tyrese Maxey shooting 16.7 shots a game, whether it's Glen Rivers calling up that play of the end, like whatever it might be, why don't you just give a quick shout out to someone on the Sixers?
I want to give it to Paul Reed because he's finally getting his justice and he's getting the minutes that he very rightfully deserves. He's played pretty well in the minutes that he's gotten, and I just think he's the perfect fit for the roster, for what they need, for what their team is now lacks now that Drummond is not here anymore. Paul Reed, shout out to Paul Reed at the Mud, B-Ball Paul, G League MVP.
Okay, Paul Reed with the shout outs. I'm going to go with someone that Glen Rivers shouted out as the unsung hero in last night's win in Toronto, and that's Tobias Harris.
Solid. Very solid.
Tobias has been great on both ends of the floor.
Great.
Great on both ends of the floor. They even, which I didn't fully realize until I listened to Rivers' post game. He said that they tried as best they could to match him and Pascal Siakam's minutes, so that Tobias would be on him.
And it worked very well.
Siakam shot 6 for 16, had 12 points. Game 2, Siakam was 7 for 20. So Siakam has struggled. Van Fleet, we know, has had some rough patches, obviously, too, during this series. But Tobias Harris, man, like, to do that on the defensive end, to have a 20-10 game in this series, to contribute in just a multitude of ways this series has really stood out. And it's been a main contributor to the Sixers' 3-0 start to this series. So shout out to Tobias Harris. Who you got? One more.
For my player? Wait.
Player, we're going to do 4 total, so you're on number 3.
Right.
So a team stat, a player stat,
Yes.
a coach.
I'll give it to Glen. I'll just give it to him because we've been quite critical of him on here. I've been quite critical of him on my page, and I think he's done a really solid job this playoff. So hopefully, it's only 3 game sample size, but hopefully he continues, and hopefully this continues, and I think he's done a really good job, especially with rotations, especially with matchups, and what you said about Harris with Siakam. I'll give him credit. I like giving credit where credit is due. So my shout out is Glen.
There you go, Glen Rivers with the shout out. My last one, I would say James Harden, but I feel like we talked about him enough. Just not for necessarily the stats, but just the way that he kind of leads this offense. So he's not my choice here. I don't want to go with the easy one in Tyrese Maxey either, but then Joel Embiid's a really easy one too. So now I'm like on my heels now. Man.
Give it to Danny Green.
I almost did, but I'm going a different route here.
Okay.
I'm going a different route. Okay. I'm going with George Niang.
Woo! Yeah.
And I'm going to tell you why.
Yes. Love it.
Let me think of a reason why. Let me think. So Niang in his last 2 games has hit 6 threes. Those have been big for the 76ers. Niang last night had 9 points, 7 boards, and he played.
Love George Niang.
A total. George Niang, I didn't realize this. This is why we do shout-outs off the dome, because we wouldn't have came to this. George Niang played 46 minutes last night.
Wow.
There's no way.
And he wasn't even a starter.
Exactly. Hold on. Wow, George Niang.
Is that wrong?
Obviously he played all the minutes in overtime. We were down Matisse. We didn't add anybody else, so we only had, an 8-man rotation.
Wow.
So, no, that's pretty significant.
Wow, dude. That's crazy.
Wait, I'm an idiot.
Oh.
No, I'm an idiot. I was looking at someone else. I was looking at 46 minutes, Danny Green.
Oh.
Scratch that from the
Dang.
record. We might even delete that. That's embarrassing. Anyway, so maybe Danny Green's the shout-out. I don't know. Danny Green also hit 3 threes, so I'm going to give it a 2-parter here.
Cool.
What am I thinking? Danny Green, George Niang, each had 3 threes yesterday. At least I double-checked, because I was like, that can't be right. Niang did play 23 minutes, so it was actually Danny Green who had 7 boards last night.
Wow.
And the technical foul. And an assist
he
and 2
was
steals.
getting heated.
He was
Did
about
you see
to get
that?
ejected. And maybe if he did get ejected, Niang would have played 46 minutes. Anyway.
Did you see that?
So, I did.
He was like in the ref's face. I was like...
That could have been 2 Ts, and I wouldn't have really questioned it. So, yeah, Danny Green / George Niang. What I was going to say originally about George Niang is... in game 1, I feel like just watching, I don't have any numbers or anything to back this up. He was in a couple matchups that got exploited by Toronto. Defensively, he was, on Siakam a couple times and someone else a couple times, and it didn't look good. And in his 23 minutes last night, I didn't notice that as much. And so he's made adjustments, I think. Credit to him. He's knocked down threes, and he hasn't been as big of a issue defensively.
Yeah.
So shout out to George Niang.
George. Woo! Love George
All right.
Niang.
So Game 4, Saturday,
Yes.
2 p.m. in Toronto. Scotty Barnes might come back. They're hoping that he will come back. Obviously, he missed Game 2 and Game 3. What's your initial thoughts here?
Just please don't turn the ball over 25 times. Please. For the love of God, please don't do it, Sixers. It's just, can't. I mean, obviously, if they get the same game and the same result happens, it's fine, but cannot go to overtime again against the Raptors. I mean, just please don't go down 20. Please.
Yeah.
Just no turnovers because everything bad stems from turnovers. So please, take care of the ball. Please just don't make any dumb passes. I'm looking at you, James Harden, and to an extent, Danny Green. And Danny Green, please don't miss your laps. Please use the backboard.
Wouldn't it be nice if James Harden comes out, drops a 30 ball, and we win?
That'd be very nice. Refreshing. Well, not refreshing because he's done that a little bit this season, but extremely nice and needed for that lack of a better word.
Yeah, that would be great. I think that would, because that's the one thing, that we're nitpicking a little bit about, and that I'm sure other people are, and in major outlets about, his scoring and aggressiveness and that kind of thing. But I mean, that'd be pretty freaking cool if he just comes out, plays aggressive, and almost not necessarily puts the team on his back, but almost like puts the team on his back and just has some James Harden moments of old and carries us to a win. That would be really good. I think it would be a confidence boost for him as well as the team. That'd be nice. So, Game 4 is Saturday. Sixers Raptors look to close it out in Toronto. I want this one. I really do. The longer the series goes, the more you give that team a chance and the more you give them confidence. And the longer this series goes, at this point now, is literally if the Raptors winning. You know what I mean? Like, if they're winning, it's going to keep going. So
James Harden 2020 game.
I really want this one. I think, one, for that, and two, for something we already touched on, is health. I mean, that next round ain't going to start for at least another week.
Yeah.
It'll probably be the following weekend.
Game 3 yet, so.
Right. Yeah, Hawks Heat play Game 3 on Friday, and again, even if that ends in a sweep, and we end in a sweep, we're not playing until the next weekend.
Yeah.
So, wow. So that'd be that would be huge.
Yeah.
I don't even want to get to Monday. I don't even want to. Don't let the Raptors back in this country, man. Let's finish this thing.
Close the borders.
Let's finish this thing. Oh man. So besides James Harden possibly going off, for the fun of it, why don't you give us, as we close this episode, give us a prediction of some sort, a final score, a stat line, another Joel Embiid game winner. I don't know.
Yeah.
But give us something.
Well, let's get like a 20, like a Shake Milton 20 piece. I don't know.
Ooh.
I don't know.
That's
something random.
I'm for it.
Something totally random. Sure.
That would be random, but that would be great. I mean,
True.
Shake in this series, real quickly. Let me make sure I'm looking at the right guy first. Shake Milton in this series, he had 10. I think in some late minutes against the Raptors in Game 1. He was 1 for 3 in Game 2, and in 11 minutes last night in Game 3, he didn't attempt a shot.
Dang.
But to your point, though, like, in all seriousness, chances are at some point we're going to need him to do something.
Oh, yeah.
Chances are at some point 7, 8, 9 points grand total off the bench isn't going to cut it.
Especially against a team like the Heat.
Yeah. So that would be amazing. Talk about confidence boost.
Yeah.
I am all for that.
Yes.
All for that.
Yes.
That's a solid prediction. Hey, this is Planet 76, episode 49. Be on the lookout for Planet 76 5-minute recap of Game 4 coming your way Saturday afternoon as the Sixers hopefully close it out, and we'll be talking brooms. We'll be talking sweet.
Get out the
on
brooms.
Planet 76 5-minute recap, and we'll see you for the next episode. Sometime next week, likely previewing round 2.
Sweet.
All right, we'll see you next time on Planet 76. You just listened to an episode of the Planet 76 podcast. Hey, we appreciate you joining us for this episode. Whatever platform you're on, why don't you hit that subscribe button for us, and we'll see you next time.